Hey gang, welcome back to another video. Now, one of the things I really love about Halloween is that it can be celebrated in so many different ways. So in this video, I'm going to be taking a turn from the usual and do something that looks like it's come straight out of the Temple of Doom. So let's get to it. The base for this build will be made from 3/4 inch PVC pipe. But before I can get to modifying it, I'll need to remove the printing from the side with a bit of acetone. This won't get everything, but it'll get really close to it, and it beats having to sand it off. I had decided that the core of this staff would be bamboo, which can be used in a variety of different themed projects and can be done easily with PVC pipe in a variety of sizes. Now with all the print gone, I can get down to marking off where I want the joints in my bamboo to be. This will give me a rough idea of the spacing and help to guide me as I start to shape the pipe. Speaking of shaping, I grabbed my heat gun and started to warm up the pipe at the first mark, making sure to keep the pipe moving at all times and at a distance of roughly 4 to 6 inches. This may be different based on the power of your heat gun, so do a test run before starting on your own. Once the pipe becomes pliable, I'll start to rock it in all directions and then push both ends of the pipe toward each other to help create a knuckle. This takes a little practice, and even I had some troubles, but thankfully, even the weird ones still look cool. When I'm happy with the shape, I'll remove it from the path of the heat gun and spray some cold water on it to help set the shape. You could also use a damp rag. And just like that, I've got my entire stick of bamboo. If only all projects worked this fast. The next thing on my to-do list is to soften the straight edge of the pipe. So I grabbed my rotary tool with a cutoff wheel and started to notch it out and give it a more organic, broken look. Since I've got my rotary tool out, I figured I'd give this bamboo staff some ridges too. This will help to further confuse the eye and give our paint treatment some recesses to rest in. But before we get to paint, there's just one more step. I'm going to scorch the PVC. This torch aging will give it some much needed variation, and will really make a lot more sense once we get to painting. To make this build more interesting, I thought I'd use this plastic skull, but I'll need to figure out where to add the holes. So I grabbed an offcut of my PVC pipe and a marker and got to mapping it out. Then I grabbed my rotary tool again and got to cutting. These holes don't need to be perfect, since we'll be wedging the skull in place with some rope a bit later. I repeated this process on the underside, and then I switched over to a sanding drum to help clean up the openings. Then it was time for a test fit, and planning the position of a second skull. With the second skull in place, it was finally time to paint, or should I say shellac. This amber-colored shellac, when applied to the treated PVC, instantly turns it from pipe to bamboo, and the score marks along the length of the pipe help to give it some much-needed variation in tone, which really helps to make this look like bamboo, even if the knuckle isn't exactly right. After letting the shellac dry for a few hours out in the sun, it was time to finalize the position of the skulls and lock them in place with some hot glue and rope. Now that everything's firmly in place, I can really start to see the finish line. But before I can cross it, I'll need to do a bit of aging to these skulls. So I grabbed my airbrush and some black paint and started to accentuate all of the details in the skull. Then I gave each skull a dusting of paint to grunge them up a bit and make them look less identical. Before they had a chance to fully dry, I sprayed them with a bit of water and used a rag to remove some of the paint from the high spots on the skull. I'm using a really light touch and allowing the rag to drag across the surface of the skulls. This helps to keep it random and ensures that just the high spots show through the paint. Once the paint is dried, it's time for a few natural elements to round out the appearance. In this case, it'll be in the form of raffia and sphagnum moss. The raffia will get wrapped and tied at the base of the lower skull, and a bit of floral wire is added to keep everything in place. I'll also spray it down with a bit of water to help remove any bends in the raffia that are still visible from being folded in its packaging. The last thing to do is add a bit more moss in the voids between the two skulls, and a final piece in the eye socket to help hide the similarities a little bit more, and this prop is done. Now they say that two heads are better than one, and in this case, I'd have to agree. Well, that's going to do it for this one. Be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already, but most importantly, go make something.